Hello and welcome everyone to Talking Technophobia in Film. I am your host, Professor Movies, and welcome to the season finale of Talking Technophobia in Film, Season 2. We've spent a very interesting year together, apart, talking about some of Stanley Kubrick's greatest films. To answer Jamie's question in the chat, because of Jamie, I did not wear a suit this time because there was such a public outcry for a costume last time. So I broke this out of storage from my time at Space Camp, and here I am. Underneath, we've got some cool merch, but I don't know. Some more on that later. Costumes are always required. All right, so again, welcome to our final class of the lovely year 2020. Shirts are obsolete, just like pants. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. Speaking of the plug that I'm gonna say that Jamie just gave me in the chat, Professor Movies, in his spare time when he's not teaching and righting the wrongs of the world, I wrote a book, and I have a new book out, and you can check it out if you want. I'm gonna give you links in the chat. One is a trailer made by the beautiful and talented Mrs. Professor Movies. Give it a like, send it to your friends. And the other one is the Amazon link for it. So if you ever sat here in Talking Technophobia and you're like, wow, Professor Movies, it's got a lot of interesting ideas about sci-fi and technology and dystopias. He should really make a movie or write a script or a book or something. Well, that's what this is, So if you really want to see what's going on in my brain, this is there for you. Please check it out. It is very much a love letter to sci-fi dystopias like 1984, Blade Runner, things like that. And it's like a fever dream in terms of what working in New York City was like. So check it out when you have time. The trailer's only a minute long, but don't watch it now. All right, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Comixology. There's a Kindle version. We got merch. This is a sticker from it. This is right next to my Stanley Kubrick sticker. And my William Blake quote, and I'm just showing off my things. We got T-shirts, we got stickers, we got all those fun things. All right, so that's enough shameless self-promotion. Thank you, Everett. Thank you. It's a graphic novel, also, in case that wasn't clear. Yeah, self-taught artist. All right, so with that out of the way, we are talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey today. Many hold it as Stanley Kubrick's finest cinematic achievement, and we're really going to put that to the test tonight. Jamie's cracking me up. As always, we're thinking about what this movie is saying, showing us about culture, technology, film in general. I think Kubrick, as a filmmaker, has a big interest in film, right? And in inserting elements of that into his own movies. My big idea tonight is I'm going to try to talk to you about what I think the monolith means. We're going to dive into some of the impact of this film, some of the lingering questions that we're left with, some of the bigger themes like alienation and isolation. We're going to think about death and how it's presented in this movie, all happy stuff. As always, we're going to give technology its due time, think about how this movie differs from other movies, how it kind of set the tone, maybe how it changed the tone that came before it. And then finally, we'll think about space, the final frontier. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek, so I couldn't avoid space, the final frontier. So with that, we'll talk about this movie overall, what Kubrick thinks about space, and why make a quote unquote good space movie. But also, that would be an appropriate time to really take a step back and think about Kubrick's filmography that we visited this year, and if we can at this point, 4 films in, 5 if you count The Shining from season 1, if we can kind of massage out some kind of thesis, some kind of idea about what we think he's doing with all of them together. All right, so a couple ground rules. if you'd like to speak on the microphone and be heard, right, press the hand icon and raise the little blue hand, like the talented Jamie Lynn just demonstrated. Thank you. If you'd like to participate in a non auditory way, right, you can use the chat feature and you can type it in the chat, right? Like Stefan, Jamie, Everett, Dina, and some other people have already exercised. Check, good. Just going over the basics. That way, even if, like I said, you don't want to use the microphone, you can still share some ideas in a quicker way. All right. See, last time I didn't have the chat opened, and now I remember why I didn't. Okay, 2001, A Space Odyssey, written and directed by your boy, Stanley Kubrick, based on Arthur C. Clarke's short story, The Sentinel. Kubrick and Clarke collaborated, met, corresponded, and developed both the film and the novel kind of in tandem. Right, they wrote a treatment together and then kind of went their separate ways to develop both. Kubrick had final authorial approval over everything, both in the movie and the book. Right, so any of the differences in the book had to be approved by Kubrick to be there. This movie was released 1 year before we actually landed on the moon, April 3rd, 1968. Starring a whole bunch of people I've never heard of, never saw again, but maybe you're more familiar with their work. I'm going to call them largely unknowns, all right? But we've got Keir Dullea, Gary Lockwood, Willem Sylvester, Daniel Richer, Douglas Rain. Jamie says we never landed on the moon. Jamie, you and my dad should talk. I think you guys would have a lot of fun with that. Well, no, the Transformers are on the moon. You guys know that. The Dark Side. Based on a budget of 10.5 million, it went on to gross 146 million. It didn't actually do well initially in theaters. It was only when the, it was only a little bit into its run when some of the, disaffected youth started to, recreationally watch this movie that it started to reach a little broader appeal. I consider this a movie in 3 acts, you might say 4, but there's definitely distinct chunks in this movie, right? There's an intermission. We've got title cards for some of the segments. It's a film that's been puzzled over for decades. Maybe we'll be able to put some of those pieces together tonight. It is Stanley Kubrick's only Oscar win, all right? He wins it for this film for Best Special Effects. I don't know if, it's a team of people doing special effects, right? I mean, sure, they come from his brain, right? But this gets awarded to him. And that's, something I hadn't seen before. It's largely considered his masterpiece. It's considered one of the high culture science fiction films out there, especially for the time. It might have been the very first. I mean, if you think about some of the more cornier science fiction that we see, B movies and things like that, this was maybe Kubrick's attempt to get it taken seriously, make it as art. What we'll see with The Shining and other things, right? It's take this pulp genre of film and try to do it in an artistic way. And then, as Jamie has already so eloquently pointed out, this movie could be responsible for a lot of people's conspiracy theories, maybe the modern age of conspiracy theories that we live in today. Last I heard, people think this was the test run, the rehearsal for the moon landing that Kubrick actually filmed later. I don't know, or maybe you'll educate us on that. Yeah, I kind of agree with what Lisa said in the chat about, I mean, to keep this a secret, like a secret can be kept between 3 people if 2 of them are dead, right? Like, so to imagine all of the people that would have had to have been involved to cover it up, it's at this long, right? It's like, okay, well, that's impressive. But I never put anything past human ingenuity. If there's a way to do it, we will figure it out, right? Including making up stories. Yeah, my dad often talked about like who put the camera there, right? You see the spaceship come down. Now we're way off topic already. I love it. You see the spaceship come down, right, and the door open up, and then the astronaut, one small step for man. But like, who put the camera there, right? My cousin, who's in like Michigan or something like that, same thing. But like, remember when we left the astronaut on the moon to film the other astronauts leaving? So like, yeah, people often question the camera, and I love it, right? I love that kind of thinking, right? Like, but who put the camera there? Because a good work of film, television, media, it tries to have you forget about the camera, right? The artifice, right? So we should always be trying to think about like, where's the camera? What's the camera doing? Who put it there? And I think even before the fake moon landing and the conspiracies that came from it, I think Stanley Kubrick was very interested in who puts cameras where, you know? So with that said, let's make sure that we can use the chat feature because people got it going, and I just want to make sure everybody can use it. So some warm up things. We're going to talk about space tonight. There's a lot of movies set in space, both going back to the 60s and before, all the way up until today. I often argue with people that what is it? Interstellar is like trying to do the same thing 2001 is doing, right? All the way up until like going through the Stargate is like Matthew McConaughey looking for Murph behind the bookcase, after he goes through the black hole. Star Wars is definitely a good space film. Anybody else seen movies in space? Spaceballs came up recently. Contact is a good one. Okay. All right. Alien, I like it, and I think Alien is one of those films who are definitely influenced by 2001. Moonraker, you guys know, I enjoy it. It's a good space movie. It's the best spoof of Star Wars I've ever seen. That last part of the movie. Yeah, you're right. So like Contact, like Jamie's pointing out, does remind me of the ending of this, just like Interstellar's ending reminds me of this. Yeah, altering perceptions, going to like a strange outside time and space. Heavy metal, very nice, Greg. Wrath of Khan is great. What's the theory? All the even Star Trek movies are good. Dune, yeah. Mrs. Professor movie reminds us that Dune is also of high quality. Captain Picard is in that, and they're remaking it maybe next year. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So now I want you to think a little bit about like the influence of talking techno, and think about in 40 years from now, you can think about the influence of talking technophobia. But think of the influence of 2001. Here's places I see it like pretty shortly after. The year after this movie, Planet of the Apes wins for best makeup. Right, the apes in it really remind me of the apes that we see in the Dawn of Man sequence in this movie. This movie was, a lot of people feel, was snubbed, right, in terms of best makeup. There's a urban legend that people thought they were real apes, right? They didn't think it was people in costumes. Aliens, right, with Mother, right, reminds me very much of Hal. Wall-E, right, reminds me of that for the same reason. I think Wall-E is on the nose, but you know what I mean. Terminator, right, like again, kind of seems influenced in Hal. Yeah. Star Trek 5 is not the one with the whales, right? See, a lot of people say they like the whales. That's the fourth one. I don't know. We should do a Star Trek one day. One day. I have a lot of thoughts. How the movies are not really Star Trek, but they're movies. Alien is good. All right. Okay. Sharon's on board with Star Trek. We got that petition going. So I think this movie has had big effects. It's definitely, you can still feel it. It's in our pop culture. Even if you've never seen the movie, there's chances are you've heard the music, right? The dun dun dun. That's as much singing out of me you're gonna get tonight. The monolith. Oh yeah, I mean, and we want to talk about the influences today, right? Recent news. We've got the monolith in the news all over again last week. We've got a monolith that appears out of nowhere in the desert. Nobody knows how it got there, and then just as quickly disappears. Nobody knows where it went. The news is saying maybe aliens, maybe street art. Who knows? All right, if ever there was a time, this would be the time. Oh, thanks, Everett. Everett, you want to start a band? You let me know. I play the trumpet. We need a drummer. That's all we need. Okay, so um, trying to keep the conversation going. A lot of people say, and a lot of people that I talk to, from my bunker, say that this is a difficult movie, a dense movie, a confusing movie, and that's always kind of puzzled me because I've seen it a couple of times now. I watched it again last night, and then two more times prior to this class recently to get ready, and like the plot is straightforward, right? It's not a complicated plot by any means, right? It's maybe not a conventional in terms of what we're used to in looking for films, right? But it's pretty I think it speaks for itself, right? Once we get to the ending, we can talk about some of the lingering questions. But here's how I see the plot. I'm going to use conflict theory to kind of like just lay it out really quick. I'm going to break the movie into 3 sections just so we're all on the same page with like what happens in the film, right? So take a look at the images. I'm going to call this Act 1, right? This is the Dawn of Man sequence. Protagonist, antagonist. We've got the man ape that the book calls Moonwatcher, is our protagonist, and the rival ape leader is the antagonist, right? That other group. There's a conflict over water resources. There's a fight. There's death, and at the end, a bone is hurled into the sky. All right, that's the first part of the movie. Yes, a monolith shows up in between fight and death, perhaps, but that's really all that's going on there. All right, Act 2, we've got our hero Floyd, and Floyd is the character I usually forget is in this movie, but I think he's really important. And if you were gonna talk about faking the moon landing, I would think Floyd would be the guy you'd want to talk about in this movie. Our villain in Act 2, though, our villains, our antagonists, are, to me, right, when I watch this, it's pretty clear it's the Russian scientist that he meets on the space station during his layover to the moon base. The scientists ask him, what's going on the moon base? We've heard rumors of an outbreak. We think it's something else, right? That's really the conflict. What is going on there? And then what is the monolith? We have the journey to the space station, the journey to the moon base. We have him addressing the people who work there about the cover-up and the need for secrecy. We have the Floyd and some other scientists exploring the lunar surface. Right, they touch the monolith, and then we have the point of the resolution of the conflict is when the high-pitched frequency starts and everyone's covering their ears. Right, and that's the first 2 acts of the movie. Okay, so other than the monolith, everything is pretty kind of straightforward. Act 3, and this is the part I think everybody remembers the best. We've got Dave Bowman as our protagonist. We've got Hal as our antagonist. The point of conflict is really around Hal's strange behavior. Maybe Hal's malfunctioning, maybe not. We've got the death of Poole. We've got the death of the other scientists that are in cryosleep. We've got Dave taking out Hal. We've got the entrance to the Stargate, and all of this is resolved when Dave Bowman maybe turns into a giant space fetus and floats through space, looking at Earth, looking at us, right? End of movie. And I mean, other than, the obvious space baby monolith stuff, right? It makes perfect sense, okay? Just take my word for that. However, the movie does leave us with some big lingering questions that maybe over the course of tonight we will touch upon, we'll answer, we'll try to, pull some meaning out of, connect some dots. But these are the big ones that I see, right? The link between the first sequence and the second and third sequence, right? How does what we see in the beginning inform what we see later in the movie? You could say very specifically the bone and the spaceship, right? I've read IMDb trivia. I know it was supposed to be a nuclear thing, but because of the Cold War, we didn't want to show bombs in space, so they don't show you that in the movie. But like more than that, right? Like symbolically, the bone and this thing in space. The meaning of the monolith is something that eludes a lot of people. I'm gonna, like I said, share my thoughts on it. Why does Hal try to kill everybody? Where does Bowman go? What does he experience after Hal's deactivation, after he passes through the monolith outside of Jupiter, that Stargate, Windows Media Player? visuals is how I think of it. Screensaver mode. And then finally, what is the significance of that giant space baby at the end, right? Is that Dave Bowman? Is that something else? All right. Yeah, and I think definitely, thinking about the bone and some of the other stuff, right? This movie is very much a movie about our relationship with technology, with tools, if you're not comfortable with technology, right? But tools, right? From the bone to the spaceships to Hal, right? This is a movie very much contemplating our relationship. Absolutely. Yeah, and like as soon as he finds a new toy, a bone, right? It's turning on our peers, using it to hurt others. Cool. All right, so no, these are good. Keep them in mind. I realize I can't. I moved my panelist screen, so I couldn't see if anybody's hands were up, but it's okay. Nobody's were. But these things, like, hopefully we'll talk about, right? And if you feel like you want to share the idea, raise your hand and let us know. So I'm trying to wrap up the me talks a lot part. So here's my thesis for tonight. I'm going to try to, tell you what I think the monolith is. I am more than prepared for people to disagree with me because it's just a theory, right? But I spent a very strange year with Stanley Kubrick's movies recently. In 2020, when we decided to do season 2 about Kubrick, I didn't realize how isolating the whole experience was going to be. And these movies kind of like were with me the whole way as I was watching them and getting notes and preparing, doing research and preparing for the class. And I'm convinced that Stanley Kubrick is super meta, right? And he is trying to break the fourth wall at every step of the way, and he's trying to draw your attention to the artifice because he wants you really to think about the things you're watching, right? He wants you to think about the power of this medium in general. All right, so monolith. While technology has increasingly improved in our lives, the medium of film has also improved. But with every step of the way, right, movies become more and more dependent on technology themselves. All right, film and art in general have had an increasingly important power in our culture in terms of both reflecting what's actually out there, showing us ourselves, but also projecting new ideas, perspectives, right? Showing us stuff we haven't thought of before, asking the questions and letting us come up with the answers, all right? And given this, the monolith in the movie functions similarly, where the monolith, quote unquote, shows the way to various characters throughout this film, right? It directs them towards new ideas, improvements, innovations, locations, right? It pushes us towards our, next phase. It helps us advance and grow. So to me, right, the monolith is this big metaphor for the film screen, right? And Kubrick is putting it in the movie to show us ourselves, right? And how film has impacted our own lives and our own development. Now, I'm not saying that the monkeys 4 million years ago were watching movies, right? But they were, maybe not the monkeys, right? But cavemen and stuff were making stories on the walls, right? So to me, right, the monolith is really about the power of film and the film screen. I show you the picture of Floyd from the second part of the movie because, like, I don't know, just turn it around and make it black and that's the monolith, right? The proportions aren't that off. Every time it appears to them, they're looking at it, they're mesmerized by it. It reminds me of Alex in Clockwork Orange, right? Being forced to look at the screen. But to me, this is Kubrick's like most optimistic and positive thing about film that he's saying, right? In Dr. Strangelove, there was this whole bunch about like, the war film, and in Full Metal Jacket, right? Like the propaganda effect and how like what we're seeing in media is not the reality, right? And that's why we get the film crew coming through, in Clockwork Orange, right? The brainwashing and all of that stuff, the Malefico procedure. So to me, right, like this movie acts as this perfect like capstone to what I see Kubrick doing, right, where he's making movies about movies. He wants us to really think about the impact film has on our lives, how film exposes us to new ideas, helps us strive towards our potential, pushes the limits. And this might sound like lofty accomplishments for film, right? But this is a filmmaker making those statements, right? So I don't know. That's what I think. As I've rambled for the last couple minutes, some things have come in the chat. Could totally be like Pandora's box, right? I like that a lot. The Pandora's box story I always found interesting because hope is the only thing that they keep in the box at the end, and I've always wondered, like, wait, but hope was one of the bad things, and like, I don't know, it changes the way you think about that story. Derek +2. Okay, I'm getting a note to read it out loud, Derek. Everything is respective. Apes are primitive, but the monolith is technology advanced in their perspective. The monolith is simplistic in its presentation, maybe an ease of a first contact. Everything is perspective. Oh, okay, I read your typo. Sorry, man. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, on the literal level, right? These otherworldly, extra-dimensional aliens, whatever you want to think of them, are the unknown, the unseen in this movie. The God character, right? It is first contact stuff, right? It's okay. We're gonna put this here with the monkeys to kind of get you on your way. When you're ready, and you've gone far, and you've left your planet, here's the next benchmark, right? The next like test, right? Okay, now you've gotten to the moon. How far can you go now? Can you get to Jupiter, right? And now that you've got to Jupiter, what's beyond? And the infinite, right? And now I'm just naming sections of the movie, but like, yeah, they are they're benchmarks, they're tests, they're attempts at first contact, right? They're trials and hoops that humanity has to prove themselves with. So like, yeah, I could totally see that. All right. So I mean, again, right? I know this is a nugget of brilliance, you've never thought of before. Oh, but you're like, but Professor Movies, the monolith is like this, right? Not like this. And I'm like, oh, my phone's dirty. I see that in the glare. And I understand that. And you're like, Professor Movies, you're reading into that whole Black Mirror stuff, right? This is the Black Mirror. The screens are the Black Mirror. We didn't have the Black Mirrors with Stanley Kubrick. I'm like, okay, fine, maybe. Except for the Stargate scene, right? Where everything is coming at you like this, and then it switches to that, right? So everything's coming at you portrait, and then it switches to landscape, right? And the third monolith, right before he passes through the Stargate, is floating horizontally outside of Jupiter. So I mean, I think that's Kubrick's clue, right? And that's like where this is all kind of I'm hinging on, I guess, a little bit. But by turning the monolith, it sure reminds me of a film screen and the way it works and how it shows them things. And I know in the book, right, it literally shows them stuff. So I mean, consider it. Think about it. Come up with some thought out disagreements, counterclaims, and come at me, bro. A packing crate for the UN. I like it. First HD TV, original PS2. Very true. No, but remember the ads for the PS3? They were really playing up the monolith and like creepiness with it. Because I don't know, go YouTube PS3 ads or something, because they were like baby doll heads, and it was very unnerving. But absolutely. And again, Black Mirror, right? Metaphor for technology in general, right? It's the piece of the world is missing. There's a hole in something. All right. So with that said, let's hopefully get some people to share some ideas. One of the things I want to talk about is alienation and isolation. Writing this, I was reminded of that show from the 90s, Alien Nation, right? But also the aliens in this movie, or the unseen aliens in this movie. But really what I want to talk about in this is how Kubrick goes out of his way to make this a hard movie to like, right? And I mean that, right? This is a very postmodern film in terms of being disjunctive and discursive, right? It is not it's not linear in the traditional sense. It does not follow a plot structure in the traditional sense. It's like mini movies. It's an anthology almost, right, around a unifying idea. He does make all of his movies kind of difficult to understand. There is an obtuseness and opaqueness with all of this. And some of the ways, like right off the bat, that Kubrick tries to make you not like this movie are, there's unknowns in this movie, right? I feel that. But more than that, there is no dialogue for like 70% of this movie. The first portion, but don't forget about the last portion also. There's about 40 minutes of dialogue, speaking roles in this movie, and that's it. The first 25 minutes or so, it's you know, silent, right? We have pantomiming going on with the apes, and you get some grunts, right? You get the ambiance, the music. The music is the main character, people have told me. So that, right, is really disjunctive, right? It makes it hard for us to connect. It makes it hard for us to buy in and suspend disbelief. Another thing, oh, I changed it. Another thing is that jump cut, right? And the way Kubrick's using the cuts. Like a jump cut, you can cover any amount of time in between it. Kubrick covers 4 million years, 4,000,000,2001 years in between that jump cut between part 1 and part 2, right? That is difficult to go along with as well. It's like, well, why did we even see that, right? Why couldn't we trim the monkey stuff down, right? To just jump, and now we're here, and so much time has passed. It's challenging to the reader, but it's making you really contemplate and think about what's going on, right? It's making us think about what is that connection between the bone and the spaceship, as some of you guys pointed out before. He wants you to feel, right? He said that he wants this to be an emotional experience, but I really do think he's, by breaking it up like this, by putting these glaring things that are constantly drawing your attention to the artifice and bringing you out of the movie, I really think Kubrick is trying to get us to really think about what we're seeing and the deeper meaning there. Excuse me. Yeah, I love jump cuts. Don't get me wrong. You can do it if you can do it well. Absolutely do it. But it can be a jarring experience. It can pull them out, you know, especially when such a large amount of time is covered in the cut. You know. Okay, so let's think about this, right? What else makes this movie hard to like? I've had a lot of conversations in the days leading up to this with people about, like, couldn't it have been paced a little better? Couldn't it have, you know, couldn't they have cut the monkey stuff? The pacing hates viewers. So when I show this to high schoolers, I show it to them in 3 separate parts at 3 different times. And I definitely speed up some of the establishing shots and trim them short. And I feel terrible for doing it, but it's like, it's lost on the youth. Because we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we've seen it better and done all over the place so much already. But because this was maybe the first for a lot of people back then, you know, we didn't mind it as much. Okay, yeah, no, and again, right? The people say it's a very groovy light show. Audio mixing often makes it barely intelligible. Some of the audio mixing in this reminds me of The Shining, right? With the chanting and the like almost speaking in tongues, and the guttural sounds and the high frequency and the ambient drumming. So I could see that. Very true. Okay, and like then the whole last section, the from the screensaver to the end, the space baby is like a postmodern avant-garde film. It's like some weird art house film, you know, that someone, you know, graduating college made. You know, like, look at all the colors, and now here's a man, and he sees himself in bed, and he's older, and now he is that man. Now he's a baby. Now he's in space, right? Like, I can see this is someone's like college thesis movie that they're making. They're like, look how artsy I am. The intermission, yeah, don't forget about the intermission that comes right after they decide to deactivate Hal. That's a jarring thing, right? It interrupts the tension of the movie, right? It provides a release, if anything. All right. Cool. Last call for any of this. No hands. Nobody wants to say anything out loud. It's all right. You're like my high school students doing Zoom, where it's like, unless I like force them, it's like nobody's got much except for typing, and that's fine. I'll vamp, right? The word vomit is free flowing. Okay, Everett disagrees and says he thinks intermission builds suspense. And I think that is also valid, that you could see that how like it's edge your seat, what you want to find out what's going to happen, but this is a long movie and you need a bathroom break, right? I could see it. All right. So from there, let's take alienation a little further. Okay, Steph, no worries. Oh man, you could do a cool photo shoot with her as the space baby though. I mean, whatever. Yeah, that's a free idea if you haven't thought of it already. Uh all right, let's talk about the happy subject of death. Let's talk about the characters and if we care about them at all. Let's talk about if anybody's relatable. Because I don't know. I think Hal's the most relatable character in this movie. I kind of feel for him as he's getting shut down. And I don't know if that's rooting for the bad guy or not, but like he seems more human than a lot of the other humans, especially like Bowman and Poole. There's something very like cold and mechanical about them. They're matter of factly, but disagree. So now's the time to share your ideas. You could raise that hand down, Con, if you want to get unmuted. But who's the most relatable character in this movie? Are you with me on Team Hal? Sounds terrible. Can you think of anybody who dies where their death matters? Does anyone's death seem tragic? Because I'm gonna float the idea that like death is not tragic in this movie. It's a fact of life. So what do you guys think? Mrs. Professor Movie likes the monkeys, right? They're her favorite character. She's a big fan of Moonwatcher. She relates to them because of their nonverbal communication. She often just communicates to me in grunts. It's very eloquent to watch play out. Lisa, you're unmuted. Sorry.
Yeah, we were just gonna. What were you gonna say?
Where was I?
I don't know.
See, that's what happens when we have so much drag between this.
Oh, I remember what it was. The Poole and Bowman seemed so cool and matter of fact because they were trying to be portrayed, we think, as competent and on top of their profession.
Yeah, I like that. It's like they're unflustered, unruffled by it all.
Yeah,
Couldn't get a rise out of either of them.
couldn't
get a rise out of either of them.
I could only hear it a little bit. Can you say it again?
Couldn't get a rise out of either Bowman or Poole, even if you tried.
Yeah, they're very like Hal kills Poole and Bowman's like, all right, I guess I'll go outside. I'll go get the body. Like there's no emotion. So yeah, you're right. That's good. And I wonder if that's a part of the training, right, that these astronauts are going through. I wonder if it's saying like you need to kind of detach from emotions, right? That emotions are gonna really screw us up in situations. You need that level head. You need your emotions clear. I like that. Okay, we got Greg's hand and Jamie's hand. Greg, you can talk. We didn't freeze. I'm just waiting to see.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello, Colin. Welcome to the show.
Yes. So what I was thinking was for Hal being one of the most relatable characters, he's kind of basically, I think the movie's showing that like him in his infant stages of becoming like a sentient being. So he's the most relatable in the sense that they're basically like the humans are at the end of their human stage and they're sort of trying to terminate him. He realizes that, but he's really just an infant defending himself. So this is kind of showing like I don't know. It seemed to me like they were showing Hal is sort of an infant defending itself. That's why he was. I think that's why it was cool when he sang the song at the end, like a children's song.
Mm-hmm.
Really just a baby, despite him being like super intelligent. But for computers, he was the first sentient computer.
Yeah.
So portraying the astronauts as sort of cold and like, I don't know, it made them feel less relatable in the sense that they were sort of at the end of their, like, this is the end of, I don't know, maybe he was trying to get at that this is the end of like humans as a level of consciousness, and now we're going to move past that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to focus on them as human beings, but necessarily as like humanity as a whole.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, I definitely think that from the bone to the spaceships and stuff like that, it's about like us and technology, and have we advanced to the point now that we're not going to advance anymore? This is the pinnacle of our evolution. The next phase is we're going to create something that's going to surpass us, right? Artificial technology. And then I think the movie goes on to say like, well, no, that's not true, right? Humans aren't done yet. There's more there's further we can go. The being like a infant thing I find really interesting because like birthdays feature very prominently in this movie. All right, Floyd wishes his daughter via FaceTime. He wishes his daughter happy birthday. Poole's parents wish him happy birthday when he's on the spaceship going to Jupiter. And then when Hal is being deactivated, he talks about the date he was first turned on and the song he learned. So yeah, maybe, right? Because there is definitely an interest, it seems, at least in terms of dialogue, right, around birthdays and children. So yeah, I like that. I think that's a cool thing to point out. I see Jamie's hand. Jamie, go ahead, miss.
Okay.
Nice.
Is there an echo? Is there an echo?
No, not really.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I don't know if I was allowed to do this, but we watched the movie and then we watched a documentary about the movie.
Okay.
I really like the way that they handled the character of Hal and the character of the spaceman. What's the spaceman's name in the movie? Bowman. Thank you. One thing that I thought was very interesting, and I think that who is the most relatable character is a very interesting question, is one thing that they were talking about was they were trying to figure out how do they make Hal a relatable character.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they did this was by having Bowman speak in a more infantile manner, like his lines in the script and just the way he acted were meant to be on par with Hal. So if you go through the film and you watch and Bowman's he's not speaking too much, he's not being entirely eloquent, they're just speaking on the same level, and the way, rather the reason that they did this was so that you as the viewer were sympathizing with both of the characters on the same level. And this isn't an answer to the question who is the most relatable character, but it's more of a solution to like why is that even able to be a question. And the reason is they did that on purpose. They wanted you to be able to relate to both of them, so they tried to make them on a very even manner.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, no, I see that now. As soon as you said it, I'm like, you're right. Like, there's a lot of simple sentences being used by Dave. All right, open the pod bay doors, Hal. Hal, I'm not going to argue with you, right? It's very short, clipped sentences, whereas, like, I'm instantly thinking of Hal's interview with the news people that we see playing in the beginning, where Hal has these very long, verbose, drawn-out sentences. Right. So, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and if you consider, like, they set that up at the beginning so that you are listening to Hal as a more sentient like character, and then as soon as they introduce this main character, Bowman, he's not being as eloquently or as more spoken. By the way, thank you, Gina and Lisa.
That's right. Congratulations, Jamie and Greg.
We got hitched. Yes. Anyway, so that was my insight. I thought I like the theory and the production behind this film a lot. So I thought that was a very interesting answer to your question. They're both relatable, and they did it on purpose.
No, I like that. Also, I learned from researching that the voice of Hal on set was a very like Cockney British accent, where it was like, Dave, I'm not gonna do that, and like they didn't actually know what Hal was gonna sound like, a lot of the actors, till they saw the finished version. So like that, yeah. I'm glad they made some of those choices, because I think something about Hal's voice also helps. Where if it had that accent, I don't know. Well, it seemed like we were already starting to talk about technology anyway, so let's make that transition. Because I'm trying to be conscious of the time. Stefan, I'm getting you. You're coming now. I'm trying to be conscious of the time, so let's talk about technology in this movie. What does this say? All right, so here's some stuff. I was gonna say, hey, let's start with like other movies, but for the sake of time, let's just talk about technology in this movie. So on the screen is just a bunch of things that happen, right? How Bowman burns his hand, the monolith makes a noise, they cover their ears, the shuttle journey, the only way to check Hal, lip reading, the pod, the control unit that's going to break, right? All of these things are things that happen with technology or involving technology. Hold on, I just want to see if there's anything important on the other slide. Yeah, and I mean, you can see the various pictures on these slides, where it's like this movie has a lot of technology, but the technology is kind of immersed in the world, not in a way where it's like jumping out at you, because everything is very practical, right? I think this movie almost feels timeless. It ages a lot better than movies with special effects. Okay, so Stefan, say anything you want. It would be better if it's about technology, but there are no rules here. Go ahead.
Hey, so yeah, it definitely is technology related, and it's
Nice.
to Hal specifically, because I was just gonna piggyback on that on his Hal's death scene kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I just recently saw an article that basically was talking about Arthur Clarke's inspiration to that scene specifically too. Is like he was visiting like an IBM computer kind of lab where they were actually introducing like the fact that like they can get a computer to speak/sing for the first time, and that was the song that they chose.
Okay.
And so in his death, he's kind of like reverting back to that, 1960 something like programming of like computers in general. So it's kind of showing that evolution of technology in reverse as he's like shutting down. And I just thought that was really interesting. I had never known that until like a couple days ago.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that either. I did know, like Hal each letter is one off of IBM, and stuff like that. I had heard about the computer singing and Daisy being one of the first songs they had a computer sing, but I didn't know that Arthur C. Clarke had seen it, and like that was the inspiration for this. That's cool. So thinking of Hal, it seems like, because I'm reminded of when the interviewer says, Hal, do you ever, feel frustrated with the human crew, slowing you down and stuff? Like Hal is running the whole ship, right? Hal is the only crew member who actually knows what the mission is. It seems like technology has outpaced us with Hal, and we've kind of given responsibility over to it. Right, it's the extent of like technology. It's the ultimate extent of technology making our lives easier. Right, we've given it everything. Right, it's GPS, so you don't need to remember the directions. Right, but it's giving everything to Hal with that, and perhaps the dangers that come from it. I think that given the way the conflict goes down, though, right, like Kubrick this movie is definitely making a statement about where we stand in relation to that technology, though. Similar to Luke Skywalker using the Force. Jamie, whenever you want. Jamie? All right, while we wait for Jamie.
Hi.
Jamie, go ahead.
I'm here now.
All right, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so one thing about the film, if you consider the fact that Hal is the only one that knows the actual mission, one thing that sets up pretty much the second half of the film is the fact that Hal is able to read lips as the computer. and they're talking about shutting him down. So if his ultimate goal or his ultimate programming is to get them to fulfill the mission, and he's reading the lips of the people that are like, we're going to shut Hal down, then it makes sense that he's trying to get rid of all these people, because he is mission minded in this film.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. I don't think Hal's malfunctioning. I think the cause is human error, right? I think, I don't know, we can play read my mind if anyone wants to try to guess where I'm coming from with that. But I think Hal is protecting the mission. I think, yes, hearing about them conspiring to shut him down is a threat to the mission's success, because Hal's the only one who knows what the mission really is. But I think that it starts even before that. I think it starts when Hal is like, so Dave, there's been a lot of weird rumors about this mission, huh? I mean, you got to think it's weird the way we've done this. What do you think? And Dave's response is, what are you, working on your psych report, Hal? And then he's like, yes, of course. Wait a minute. And then he reports the error, right, about the malfunction that's going to come. I mean, I think from that point on, Hal sees Dave and the rest of the crew as a threat to the mission, right? And he's checking them, right, to see, you know, do they know what's going on? Are they suspicious? You know, because he's got to deal with all that, right, and make sure the mission gets accomplished. So I think when I say human error, I think it has to do with like what the people back in you know, ground control programmed him to do, right? They programmed him to protect the mission at all costs, and be dishonest towards the rest of the crew, and maybe not directly dishonest, but right, by having a piece of information that he's not allowed to share with the rest of the crew. I really think Hal comes into some kind of internal conflict, right? I told Mrs. Professor Movies, right, I think he feels guilty about it and starts to, like, you know, act out as a result of that. But I mean, it could be lots of things. I like what Lisa's saying about it being a cautionary tale, guilt and emotion. Well, the movie, you know, well, the Jupiter stuff, that voyage, the Jupiter mission starts with the does Hal actually have feelings question, right? They're asking Hal, they're asking the crew. And Dave's like, well, he really seems like it, but I suppose that's how they programmed him to seem, because it makes it easier to talk to us. But the film is asking us, right? Does Hal have emotions, right? Is he capable of feeling? Is he self-aware and sentient? And his self-preservation, right, one might argue, is a level of sentience, right? His need to protect himself, him saying, please don't kill me, his fear of death. The twin comes up with different answers. That's why they want to shut him off. Ever, you're right. Yeah, I just don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think that Hal is asked to lie to the crew about the true nature of the mission, and therefore, when he feels like they're sniffing, they're like, because they're like, what are you working on your psych report, Hal? I really feel like he's like, oops, maybe I went too far. Okay, I got to make something up. Oh, this is going to malfunction. I think he's covering himself. I think I don't know, right? But it could be lots of things. But the fact that right after they deactivate him, the message plays telling us and Dave what the real mission was, and it's about the monolith, and the only person on the crew who knew was Hal. I keep going over it, trying to think about, like, well, why did this happen with Hal? Lisa doesn't think he was afraid of death. She thinks he was safeguarding the mission. Yeah, I agree, right? I think that, I don't know, like, my mind is going, please, Dave, please. I think maybe there's some fear of death there, but I could also see how, like, without him, perhaps the mission has a chance of not being as successful, because he is being touted as being superior to humans, right? This is a superior technology. It can beat us in games of chess, you know? It runs this ship, right? It's responsible for millions of simultaneous tasks, you know? So yeah, I think that, yes, it's probably both. Not anymore. Okay. Any other thoughts? Bone, weapons, Russians, Hal. Yeah, it feels similar to Ex Machina. I told Dina that I feel worse for Hal than I do the girl robot in Ex Machina. And it's not because she's a girl robot. It's because I feel betrayed by her, like General Hux does. Like she leaves him there. She manipulates him. I get it. It's probably the most human thing any robot's ever done. But I don't know. I'm like, oof. I don't like you, lady. I don't like you, robo lady. Okay. All right. So I think there's a lot to unpack there. So it's 8:00, so I'm just gonna try to make moves. We can, I'll lock the door and she can't end Zoom until we decide it's time. But she's laughing, I hear her. But Space, the Final Frontier. So Stanley Kubrick said a lot of things. He talked a lot. But he really didn't want to explain the ending of this movie. He said as long as you had some kind of emotional reaction, that's good, right? Like that's what he wants, right? He wants you to feel something, right? It's going to be a subversive thing that is a slow burn, and many of us have had years, right, to think over this movie. No, I mean, like a good artist never wants to explain their art, right? You create and then you give it to the world and it's no longer yours, right? You don't want to ever talk about it again. You want people to talk about it. Right, but to tell someone what it means defeats the whole purpose of art, right? And that's why we're here doing this thing, because Stanley Kubrick would never do it, right? But this is in my mind, what's fun about art is thinking about it, talking about it. But yeah, Kubrick could have been like, nah, the monolith was I had a scary dream, and it was really, a funny rock I tripped over one day or something, right? And like the answer would be so disappointing, and that's why. When the legend is better than the story. Wait, when the legend's better than the truth, you print the legend? I don't know. It's the Who Shot Liberty Valance thing. So Kubrick said, space is one of the greatest themes of our age, yet it's still almost untouched by serious art and literature. It's time to break away from the cliches of monsters and madmen. There's a reason I emphasize that. There will be dangers in space, but there will also be wonder, adventure, beauty, opportunity, and sources of knowledge that will transform our civilization. And that's pretty much as close to him telling you what he's trying to do with this movie as we're going to get with Stanley Kubrick in a very Kubrick way. We did not talk about eating yet. Do you want to talk about eating, Lewis? Okay, I can. You could type it and I could read it. Lewis thinks it's all about food. The food does look like baby food. They do eat some raw meat when they're monkeys. He does eat in the Jupiter Beyond place. Okay, I can see it. You could definitely do some analysis with food. I once wrote a paper about Shakespeare's use of food, right? Because the banquets often symbolize wealth, and Macbeth doesn't get to eat at his banquet, so that's something. Something like a wormhole jump, almost like they did in Interstellar. Perhaps they're going to the Stargate, time starts over. Maybe, right? It's Futurama's theory also, right? Time is cyclical. It's linear until it's cyclical. Every stage of development, they're eating. The monkeys, yeah. We eat more than we need. We reach too far. It's an Icarus tale. Okay, I like that. All right. So again, right, like this is kind of like a place where we can share some of our final thoughts about this movie or some of the movies we've looked at this season, right? We looked at Full Metal Jacket, Clockwork Orange, not Barry Lyndon, and Dr. Strangelove. You planted the monolith that's out there to promote this class. Courtney, that's exactly what I did. That's why you haven't seen me in like 2 weeks. It's not because of quarantine. It's because I rode a plane and did some art. Our brain development led to our technological advancement. Absolutely, right? Starting to eat, cooking food, also being able to purify water, right? All of that has evolutionary effects on us and our brains. So I agree with Lisa's comment a lot. Babies explore the world through their mouths. Okay, that's good. They do everything. They put everything in their mouth. All right. So Stanley Kubrick, secret foodie. I like it a lot. Man, that's better. So then the monolith is just like a table, right? It's just like the banquet table that they're gonna put the food on. All right, forget the film screen. This is a lot better. When we finally get there, we might meet an alien, and we get a guy eating a fancy meal, and we can't get past our humanity. Yeah, that's true. All right, guys. Seems like we've figured it out. 2001: Space Odyssey, really just a metaphor for buffets and the dangers of them. I like it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Kubrick. I think this is like his most optimistic movie that we've watched this year, right? Especially in terms of what it's saying about technology and our relationship with it. We don't get wiped out by the doomsday machine, right? We don't get brainwashed, right? We don't get I don't remember how full. We don't lose our humanity, right? If anything, this is a movie about, very much about our humanity and where we can go with it, maybe, and the next level. Somebody else told me maybe that's a zoo. It's like a human zoo he's in the end, and we're just and then we're all the aliens watching him. But we're the aliens watching him then in that scenario, and I think that's kind of cool too. Movable Feast, I like it. That's Hemingway, right? I could be wrong. I think it's Hemingway. It's the English teacher in me. I'm like, oh, that's bad if I don't get it right. All right. All right. Well, last chance to say something if you'd like to say anything. Going once, twice, 3 times. I know it's a Friday. Jamie. Okay. It is. All right. Yeah. Sharon said it's Hemingway, so I believe you guys. Food in space. All right, Jamie. If you wanna share, you can.
Okay, so one concept for this whole film is that it is about creation and destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather that existence or life is about creation and destruction, because you're born and then you die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you consider this, on going back to your earlier point that this is a film in 3 segments or 4 segments.
4, yeah. I won't fight you on that.
I'm gonna go to 4. Ready? Okay. So the first act of this film would be that there are ape men that are created. Man is created, and it finds a tool or a weapon and learns how to destroy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's smashing all the bones. That's destruction.
Yep.
If you go to the fact that we have evolved into human beings and we're sentient and we're very smart, and then you find this big monolith which kind of like continues the idea of creation. There's something new, something exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a second part. Then we go on to the destruction of a new technology, or the destruction of man. Hal and Bowman are trying to destroy one another.
Mm-hmm.
Or are they trying to destroy one another? I'm not entirely sure. It seems like they're in a fight to see which one will win.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. 4th
Conflict.
segment. Yes, conflict. Last segment, which, if you think about it in the idea that this film is about the creation and destruction of man, it's we now have found aliens. They can tap into our brains, and the idea of man is destroyed, and this new higher advanced alien species exists, and the film ends with a child and a fetus just going back to creation
or destruction. Maybe that space baby coming to kill us. You think about that?
The space baby has no weapons in its hand. I think it's creation. We can argue this later.
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's a giant space baby floating out there, but I don't know if he needs weapons. His just existence is frightening. But no, I hear what you're saying.
Do you think that space baby is the size of a planet like Melancholia, and it's actually hurtling towards Earth and will slam into it and destroy everything?
Yes.
Anyway, my point is the film, like the end of the movie, literally means nothing in and of itself unless you look at the movie as a whole, and it's about creation and destruction, and that's just what the movie is.
Okay. You know another movie that's about creation and destruction?
What? Which one?
Frankenstein.
What up, Frankenstein?
Where, one way to look at this is, see, we had to get one in tonight. One way to look at this is like, mankind, we invented HAL, right? We invented technology, these tools, and, just like your boy, Dr. Henry Frankenstein, Henry, you've ultimately got to take responsibility and destroy the very thing you created, because that's your responsibility as the creator. Yeah. And I bring that up as a segue.
I was literally just gonna say that's the best segue of all time. Love to you.
See, so just so people know, Jamie and me, we have like extensive meetings about how we're gonna segue into things prior to the class. So we ran an Instagram poll. This was the last class of 2020. We ran an Instagram poll. There were two choices. It was monsters and madmen, and that's why I emphasized the quote in the previous slide. And then the other one was like remakes, sequels, and reboots. Monsters and Madmen won the poll. So in season 3, when we meet again, if there is a 2021, we will meet again in March, and we'll watch the movie that I feel like you're all like, we probably should have watched this already. But I decided, I'm like, doing a year of Kubrick movies kind of broke me, and was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. The pandemic did not help. But I was like, it'll be easy season 2. We'll do Kubrick. And I don't know what I was thinking. But I really do want to kind of return a little bit to my roots. So I'm going to, do some things I definitely have some ideas on. And I'd like to start with Frankenstein. All right, so it's the 1931 Frankenstein. It's on my Google Drive, so I can share it with people if people need. I'm not sure how available it is, where it's streaming. What's Frankenstein, Lewis? Well, he was a doctor, and he made stuff, and we're going to find out what he made. But if you look at the poster, right, the man who made a monster, I like this movie. This movie is also probably a good movie to make fun of. So I would say watch it once seriously and then watch it a second time just to laugh at it, because it definitely doesn't age as well as it could. And who knows, maybe one day in 2021 we'll be in person again. But until then, thank you for sharing your ideas. Thank you guys for being a part of this class. Thanks for listening to me and each other. And as always, I don't know, Jamie sent me a text. And as always, I'm Professor Movies, and I don't have a way to end the class.